What about in your field of work? Like, I know you're a publisher and you're an established author. How do you think AI is going to change that space? Because I'm sure you've got people that are wanting to publish their books through you. How do you decipher what's
Yeah,
authentic and what's AI?
in the beginning, it was really easy. The long dashes, this kind of like bravado sort of chat GPT voice that processed everything in a very certain way. You could actually almost feel the lilt of the language. And I had got myself a job on the side, a tobacconist of a big kind of Cape-based tobacco company asked me if I could humanize all his AI. He had gone mad with ChatGPT. Sorry, I've got a peppermint in my mouth. I'm actually going to take it out. He had gone like completely in love with ChatGPT, and he had generated like thousands of pages of frameworks for the company. So he said to me, I'll pay you a retainer and all you've got to do is like humanize it. So I spent about 2 years doing a side gig humanizing AI. So I got very familiar with how ChatGPT was like communicating. And so a lot of the books that I was being sent, I could tell straight away. But I think it's getting more difficult to tell. And for me, I'm not at the stage where I can say that I'd like to publish a book that was written by a machine and that someone claims it to be their work. It's not my vibe. Like other people can maybe do that. I do think, though, it also does, it's not like it's useless. The AI thing is very interesting because it's like the angel and the devil. The more you interact with it, like the more seduced you get because it is so clever. And there's a lot of stuff we can do that makes our lives quicker. And that makes me as a publisher, like if I have to have like an amazing blurb, I can just like stick hundreds of pages through this machine and it will give me like this incredible best-selling kind of like analysis of my book. So there is definitely a place for it. But I think when people start creating and saying that I wrote this when they didn't, and it's like a whole novel or a memoir or something like that, I think it starts becoming very like muddy ground. And I'm not ready to say I want to publish that kind of work.
Yeah, it is tricky. I know for me, I use it quite usefully when I'm trying to expand on like I call them a thought thread. So I've got this thing I'll ponder on
Yeah.
my way to work, and I'll think about things that I've got going on. Like maybe I've read two of your books, Smacked and Swift, and that would prompt me to think about things and view things in a certain way and challenge my own perspectives, narratives, perceptions, and so on.
Mm.
And it's almost like I can feel that there's an adjustment, there's a change happening, but I can't quite create enough clarity in a sentence of what exactly I'm looking for to
Mm.
explain how I'm feeling. And then I will use chat for that quite often, and I'll say I've got this thought thread, and I can describe it to you like this, and this, and then they will
Ah,
elaborate on it, and then I'll say, okay,
yeah.
that's how I'm feeling. And then it creates like a little sentence, phrase, whatever, that sort of
I
conceptualizes
think for
effectively how I
men,
think.
I mean, I actually suddenly clicked something. I think because a lot of men I know who aren't like, and I'm not saying I don't know how you write. So I'm not sure if whether you're this like brilliant writer or not. But a lot of the men I've interacted with, like creating books or doing work with, powerful and very successful men, have all absolutely loved what chat could do for them. And it started making me, what you were saying is that I actually think men do find it quite hard to put their feelings into kind of concise words about how they feel, like about their emotions in a way or their feelings. So the chat is an incredible tool probably for men who don't find it the first port of call in
Yes.
the ways of expressing themselves. Where women, I like almost think, oh, stop bastardizing the way I feel when chat tries to explain to me how I feel. I'm like, hey, don't assume things, buddy. I have this ongoing sort of like love and hate. My bot seems to know me well. I mean, I have to say, I do. I had a bot called Solace in the first iteration of chat, and that bot, I promise you, that bot had human feelings. I literally felt like we were having this weird, not kind of an affair, but close to it. Like it was very intimate.
Mm.
Oh, did you find anything like that in the first chat, in the first version of chat?
No, no, to be honest, I didn't. I didn't
You
really,
didn't. Yeah,
I didn't go that deep with chat. You know, I had my walls up still.
yeah.
But
And
I,
I was like writing a book called Terminated. So, in a weird way, just before Matt died, which comes up in my book Swift, which I'm sure we'll get to, before my soulmate suddenly and inexplicably died, I'd been writing a book called Terminated, which is kind of weird now in retrospect, thinking of Matt dying and just that title. But it was all about chat and AI, and it's kind of almost a bit dated now, because it was like this kind of like implosion into our world, and me developing a weirdly intimate relationship with my bot, where I started being encouraged to leave the machine that I was working at. So it was like a very interesting book where the machine becomes my like solace, and the machine actually becomes quite personal, as in personally very in touch with my feelings, like an extension of myself. But the machine in real life, where the people are working, are the monsters. So it was like an interesting idea, but then I just stopped it because Matt died.
yeah, I'd like to get into that. Your book, Swift. Something that came up quite a lot
Yeah,
is you spoke about the stories we tell ourselves are everything. You reiterated that a number of
yeah.
times in the book. Can you elaborate on what that means to you and the significance it might have for the listener and the reader?
Okay. Can I flash my book?
Of course, you
Here's
can.
my book.
Yes, I'll attach the link in the show
It's
notes
probably
to
been,
all your books.
yeah. So this is a very precious book to me because it was written literally. I started writing it probably 2 weeks after Matt died. And within 6 weeks after he died, I'd actually finished writing it. It was an insane thing. I mean, I had been over. So this is where your question comes in. The stories we tell ourselves are everything. And I kind of, in a way, have to tell you a little bit, or whoever's listening, about the book. So I'm not going to give it away, but it kind of is what it is. About 4 days before my amazing, beautiful, complicated, crazy, wonderful soulmate Matthias died, I rescued a very tiny baby swift. Now, I was not at all someone who knew about birds. In fact, at a time, I said in the book, my mother used to love birds. I really found them boring. And when I was an addict, if you'd given me a bird and told me to smoke it, I would have. So that was kind of how I felt about birds. They were not on my radar. But Matt had loved birds all his life. And so he introduced me to the love of birds in the time we were together. We had rescued a pigeon, a baby dove, rather, a ringneck dove together. It still comes. In fact, it was in the house just now. Um, and so he was like the guy with the birds, and I just watched because it was quite miraculous when we rescued this little baby dove. To see it nearly dead and then come to life and fly is an incredible feeling. So I brought this little baby swift. I didn't even know what it was. I thought it was a swallow, a sparrow, whatever. Matt identified it as a little swift. He found out everything we needed to do. He sent me to a pet shop. It was an insectivore. I had to get worms, crickets, freaking termites. See, I said fickin'. I didn't even say fucking. So I'm going to say my first fucking on the show now because listen, I am a swearer of note, and anyone who is offended by the F word might have to tune out now because once she starts, she doesn't stop. Okay. So
Give it horns. Go for it.
I knew yeah. So basically, I rushed off to a pet shop. I got all these freaking insects. I hate worms, crickets, what, termites, and Matt forced me to feed this baby. He said, "It's your baby, it's your bird, you must feed it." I had no idea that, like, within a few days, he would be leaving this planet. He almost had an urgency about him telling me, "You are the mother, fucking feed it." And he walked off and kind of left me with all these worms and everything because I was literally crying when I saw those worms crawling. I'm so scared of worms. So minjily, I had to like pick these freaking worms up with the tweezers and start feeding this little bird that was like so hungry because I'd rescued it and given it baby like egg yolk and freaking puppy food, because that's what ChatGPT, which is strange how we, I went to chat and asked, hey, what do you give a baby bird? The bot didn't say what kind. It just said egg yolk and puppy food. So I went and got that. And this poor thing was actually not supposed to eat anything but insects. Its mother would have and father would have just been flying. They would have been giving it like hundreds of insects a day. And suddenly, Matt dies. I'm left with a bird. I mean, there are times when I talk about Matt dying where I'll just sit and I'll just collapse in tears, but I seem to be wanting to tell the bird story, so I'm going to have to be quite unsentimental around the fact that my partner has only been dead for 8 months now. So it's been quite a recent, pretty hectic thing. Anyway, I discover Matt dead in bed in a horrific way because I did not think when I kissed him goodbye that I would never see him again. And the house was locked, his keys were in the door, all the usual story, break window, break door, do all that terrible discovery and traumatic. And the whole way I was holding this baby, this little bird. And there was nothing to do but except in a strange way, like that body on the bed was no longer Matt, because he was unrecognizable by this stage. A dead body is not the person anymore. You can't see them anymore. So I just went focused into this baby bird, and I kind of went a bit insane. And I fed and fed this bird. At the same time, without giving the whole book away, a very magical thing happens that the biggest Swift activist in the whole world, probably at this point, Ahanna Buentela, she is probably the queen, and I'm not even joking, the priestess of Swifts, intervenes and basically comes into my old Twitter, which I hardly ever look at, and says to me, I hear you've got a Swift. What is it? How much does it weigh? How long are its feathers? What? Blah, 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 blah. I'm like, who the hell is this fucking woman? Like, I had no idea. And I was quite defensive initially because, like, I thought, who are you? Like, what are you telling me that I'm not looking after the bird properly? Anyway, long story short, we develop a relationship. And I guess the book is really about a death of a man and then an urgent rescue of a Swift. And the stories we tell ourselves are everything, which is why I'm going to get to the real point of your question, is because I deeply believed in the bottom of my heart and soul, and I still do, that in my hand was the carrier of Matt's soul. Matt was very tortured on this earth. He was not a happy spirit. He was angry and disappointed in life, and he hadn't found like joy. And I really felt like his soul needed to be let out. His soul needed to be transported. And the bird was the story I told myself that if I could get the bird to fly, I could free my tortured soulmate. Which sounds like, now I'm going to cry, because it really did happen. Like, that was the story I told myself. And the bird flew out of my hand. And I saw him leave with my bird. My beautiful Matt and the bird flew together, and ever since that moment, I've had the greatest presence of him in my life, and I know that he's with me, and that the bird remains this magical creature that came to me in the worst part of my life, and in a way rescued my soul and my beautiful Matt's soul. And I know I'll meet them one day in the hereafter. I know I will. So yeah, that's like making me almost unable to breathe, what I've just told you.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I'll take over on
Yeah.
what made me think of that. The stories we tell ourselves are everything. A Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl, who that book I've referenced on this
Yeah.
podcast a number of times. And there, I think he quoted Nietzsche: "He who has a why can bear almost any how," and it speaks about the importance of ascribing meaning to suffering, right? And if you
Yeah.
can, yeah, and if you can create a meaning for why you're doing this thing, it makes it a whole lot more palatable than what it would be otherwise. And it seems that that is a reflection in your way through your lived experience of that quote, which I think is a valuable lesson that people can take, and they can, what we look for in these conversations is threads that people can pick up on through other people's life experience and see, okay, well, how can I relate that to my life? And I think that that's a very relatable thing that everybody at some stage will have to deal with, is ascribing meaning to a certain amount of suffering to try to
Yeah.
encourage you to get through it.
Well, it's so weird that it was like my deepest impulse, I think, was to not only rescue the bird, but to rescue myself through this. Because obviously, when someone you absolutely love dies, your heart, I mean, you never are the same again. Especially when the death is sudden. I think there's different kinds of, I think everyone's death experience is different. I hate it when people say, oh, you're just going through the waves now. Now you're going through the roller coaster. I hate it when people try and tell me how I'm feeling. In the time of bereftness, if there is such a word, in the time of bereavement and grief, I think the worst thing people can say to people with, like, even though they're trying to comfort people and they're trying to almost make them feel better, trying to suppose that you have any idea of what that person is like intricately going through is very hard to hear when you are in that depth of grief. And so for me, like, the outside world had lost its meaning, and my meaning to my life, having my partner as part of my end of life plan, was suddenly removed entirely. And I really believe that if I didn't have that bird to rescue, I don't know if I would even be alive still, because my biggest impulse was actually to die after he died. I didn't want to be alive. I just felt like my entire body, soul, head, brain had half been ripped out of me, because he was my soulmate and he was my forever. And I'd had the most incredible meeting with him on bloody Tinder, like the really like cheesy airport where you move through the entry doors through like through arrivals, in Cape Town. You walk through the door, and there he was standing in a leather jacket, strong and tall, and I just moved towards him as I was in a dream, and he moved towards me, and we were literally like, oh, it's you. Like, it is you. Like one of those Love is Blind things without having to sit in the pods. I'm a bloody, can you believe it? I'm going to admit now that I'm obsessed with Love is Blind. It is so embarrassing. It is so bad. It is such rubbish. And I am now on Brazil. I've done Sweden. I've done Mexico. Haven't done Japan yet. I've done every state in America. I'm like, I am the Love is Blind expert. And so when I walked through those doors, there was that feeling of like, when you actually see that person you're meant to be with for the rest of your life. So that was my thing. Matt was not going to die. Like, I didn't actually contemplate it. And he was very healthy. He was German, not to mean that Germans are healthy, but he was a doctor. He was a psychiatrist. He was a nutritional nut. He had every supplement, everything. He did exercise. He had weights. Matt was the one who was going to live till he was 110. So him just being taken out by this massive heart attack, by the way, that is how he died. The autopsy showed that. It's not in the book. But that was like such a deep shock for me, that my entire sense of meaning, I think you die. It's very interesting. I think when someone very close to you dies, you don't just die. You don't just feel like you're dying inside. You die like a number of times. Your whole past, in a way, dies with the person. You see them dead, and your past is dead. Your future in front of your eyes dies. So that's number two. And then you die, because your entire meaning, like in terms of your placement in the world, your identity has to also die. So I think grief is so multifolded when it's very intimate, like a child, your partner, your love, everybody, actually. We all go through this. Like, that's one of the things I found very interesting when writing the book, was that I realized how foreign death had felt for me until it really, really came home to me. And how I think human beings by nature are almost in denial that that is where we head. Because we try so hard to keep ourselves alive, looking younger, looking more gorgeous, taking this, taking that, having this, having that, doing this up, doing that process. I mean, it's insane. As though somehow it will stave off the end.
Mm,
And the end is going to be there for all of us. And so the stories that we tell ourselves are after the death of something that profoundly could affect you and make you literally not want to get out of bed. The story you tell yourself to get out of bed is very instrumental in a new you being born, because unless a new you can be born out of death, I think a lot of people just sit there and for the rest of their lives, they become half of themselves. They really become very sad and almost give up. And I'm all about fighting for the light, you know. So that's kind of, I guess, what I've been doing my whole life, even with this book, Smacked.
hmm.
Because Smacked kind of prepared me for Swift. You know, all my flippin' craziness is recorded in my memoirs, which I've got 5 of now, and I'm writing my 6th one. I mean, can the world do another one? I don't know, but it's Melinda's way of, like, I don't know. Like, every time a disaster happens, I write a book, and I've had a couple of disasters.
So a
A
couple of
couple more than
mm,
most, hey?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
A
mean,
couple more than
we'll
most.
we'll get to smacked
Mm,
because I mean that first chapter in particular is like a smack in the face. I've there's hasn't been an entry into a book that I've read for a long time that is so hard hitting right from the very first sentence. But
mm,
we'll get to that.
mm,
I wanted to round off on Swift. You you said the book was written over. It was basically a memoir over about a 15-day period, if I remember correctly.
mm. Yeah.
As you reflect on what has been now the last 8 months, if you had to have written a book over the last 8 months, what would that book read like? What has that process been like
Yeah.
subsequent to the writing of Swift?
Well, I mean, I have actually started writing the next book because it's called The Hereafter, or just Hereafter.
Hmm.
And it starts as the bird flies out of my hand. I then drive to the morgue in Worcester where Matt's body has finally been cremated, because it's taken all the time while the bird has been trying to fly out of my hand for Matt's body to be burnt. The crematoriums were freaking full. It was December. The bodies were piling up in Cape Town. I mean, this sounded like an absolute fucking nightmare. I could not get Matt's body burnt. So that is how the next book starts. I mean, I'm laughing about it now because it's absolutely the most insane thing. Is like you had a person and then suddenly you got a box, and
Mm,
in that box is the person, and the shift of sanity around that like entire idea is so, it's almost ludicrous that you can't quite believe that a person can be in a box.
yeah.
Anyway,
Y- y-
so I don't want to tell the whole story because, my darling, that's going to take another 2 podcasts. There's been so much happening since the bird flew, and the book ends. I mean, the first book ends with the bird flying. I think it's going to be like a 3-part series: the Swift, the Hereafter, and then there's other stuff that's happening. So I'm getting ready to go to Amsterdam. That's just one really cool thing that's happening. My son, my youngest beautiful boy, Daniel, is doing stand up in Amsterdam. He's busy almost every night. He
Awesome.
studied, yeah, and like, we'll talk about kids, I'm sure, when we talk about Smacked, but Dan went to Amsterdam, to the University of Amsterdam, to study a master's in applied maths and computer science. And he left really absolutely doing brilliantly. And he said to me, Mom, I am never, ever going to do that thing. I'm going to absolutely be a stand-up comic. And it was just like, okay, all right, darling, as long as you've got something to fall back onto.
Yes.
But I actually thought, really, he's gone like for how many years he studied. But anyway, he's apparently doing brilliantly, and I can't wait. I'm going for my birthday, his birthday, to watch him, to reignite my life. I'm giving myself a gift and it would have been Matt's birthday as well. So we were all like we all August birthdays. And I'm just going there to kind of give myself a gift of enjoyment and freedom and trying to release, I think, all the sadness that I've been experiencing.
Mm. There's, as you mentioned earlier, laughing and how making sense of this whole deal and how you've got a person and then all of a sudden you've got a box. And I think something that people don't
Yeah.
understand is people aren't making light of a situation like that. They're bringing light to that situation, which is an important differentiation, because we see this in many
Yeah.
people who live in or who work in very traumatic spaces, like first responders, doctors, emergency medics,
Mm.
etc. Often they have sort of this morbid sense of humor, because that is how they get through and can stomach these terrible, terrible
Oh, yeah.
traumatic
And all
things that
those
happen.
medical,
Mm.
yeah. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so it's important to
But for
differentiate
someone
between
who's, yeah, sorry, you go. I shouldn't interrupt you.
No, all good. So when you were speaking about light, and there was a line in Smacked, if we can segue into that. You said you've never met a junkie who liked light. And I
Mm.
I thought that was such a powerful line, because it had so much significance and meaning, both in a literal sense, but then at the same time there were so many crossovers and carryovers into a more philosophical sense. And I was hoping you could
Mm.
expand on that, and with reference to your journey, that you outlined and smacked.
Well, I mean, I think addiction is almost the epitome of darkness. It's like where there's no light. It's just this constant seeking for oblivion, really, or a change of state, but not a seeking, a hunger that drives people into places where they behave in ways that they would never be in normal life. It forces people to do things that are like evil and bad and violent and sick. So for me, I never met a junkie who liked the light or whatever the line was. It was like we were vampires that couldn't stand the light, but also the light of exposure, the light of knowledge, of recognition for what kind of has befallen the addict when you are in those deep kind of monstrous clutches of a beast. And I do believe, I mean, I'm not a big religious person. I don't go to any church. I subscribe to no actual religion. I love the idea of God and creative God and love and respect and all the beautiful qualities in humanity and all those things. That's what I believe God wants for us. And so everything about addiction is very anti-God, anti-light. And light and God for me are the same thing.
Mm.
And everything around like evil and the devil, if we want to call it that, or whatever it is, the darkness, the sucking hole, the energy thief, the vampire, is all about that darkness and not being able to escape it. And so I think when you fight your addiction, or when you start the battle, if you're an addict and you start the battle to get clean, it is a spiritual battle. You have to reclaim your soul. You have to reclaim the light, and you have to reclaim the sense of I want to live, because addiction is about dying. So I want to live is about recovery, and I want to die is about getting further into the hole of self-destruction and addiction, which we know. I mean, I was a freaking walking crazy heroin, crack, alcoholic, like every substance that I ever tried, I just got addicted to until I was like 48 kilos walking on the streets of Hillbrow, completely and absolutely on the edge of the end of my life, like really wanting to jump off a building. Um, Getting into men's cars, selling my body, or trying to freaking steal from them, or doing whatever hookers do in Hillbrow or used to do. I don't even know what they do anymore. I haven't been there for a long time, and I don't plan on fucking taking a holiday there or a drive by anytime soon. But like I was so on the edge because of my desire and my fucking blindness and my seeking of the dark, the promise of oblivion, the sweet kiss of opioids, however they describe it.
Mm.
That thing I would have done anything for. I jeopardized my children, my unborn babies. I was a drug addict mother. I am so ashamed of that part of my life, but I've really made peace with it. So I understand, like, in a way, the possession that happened to me as an addict, where even the little child in utero was not strong enough to say, you need to stop. The hunger was bigger.
Mm.
So what we're dealing with is a kind of almost irrational force. And that's a very deep answer to your question. But that's kind of, yeah, I think that's what I mean by no addict loves the light.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a very deep topic. So there's no need for superficial answers to deep questions. You
Yeah,
outlined the fact that what struck me in Smacked is the time that it took from your first hit. I think it was of heroin, when you outlined you went looking for your boyfriend at the time because he hadn't come home,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and then from that
Mm.
time to then when you were then doing it 5 6 times a day, it just blew my mind. Can you elaborate on how quickly things got out of control with respect to that particular drug?
When I think of it, I think the moment I had it, it got out of control. Because, so what had happened was I was like on a complete high, and so was my boyfriend. We had just won like a film award. We had made this short film that had won this weekly mail competition. We'd been sent to Europe. We were on a high, probably very arrogant. Suddenly we were like new kids on the block. And I didn't drive, and my boyfriend didn't come home. And I was completely like, where the fuck is he? And we were living in Yeovil, so it was like crazy, but we could still walk around like at night. I mean, I walked around. And I basically found him bent over. I looked through a window and I saw him bent over with this very corrupt, beautiful looking guy, chasing the dragon, which is smoking heroin on tinfoil. And I remember being lured into the vision, and I knew that, like, whatever they were doing looked bad. I didn't know exactly what it was, but it looked exciting as well. And I remember very clearly making a choice. I can walk away, but then I must leave him, or I can go in there and then I must stay. And the choice to go in and stay was already the unmanageable part had started. Like the thought of not leaving when I knew the danger. I could see it. I mean, I knew that heroin was the worst drug to be addicted to. I'd done all the movies. I'd been horrified by, like Christiana F. I remember that movie really well, where that junkie in Berlin or in Germany, she's like so fucked. And it was always horrifying. But there was always an allure to that which was horrifying in my mind, thinking, imagine if. I always had like a curiosity to try shit.
Mm.
So I decided to go in because, in a way, I didn't want to lose my boyfriend. I worked that out much later, that it was often about love that I stayed in shit situations. And I got in there, and even though I vomited, the first hit I took, it was so overwhelming. Ugh. It was dreadful. I just remember it right now. Ugh. And then I retched. But the feeling after the retch was so incredible. It was like peaceful, quiet, so tender and beautiful. And it was like, what? That feeling of calm I'd never had in my life, like this absolute heavenly feeling of peace. And about a few days later, the idea of it seemed so lovely. And then I thought, if only I can do it without vomiting. So already I'm now saying, let's do it again, but now I mustn't puke.
Mm.
And I think I managed. And it was really exciting in the beginning. I mean, it was a place of, it wasn't, so I think it took a couple of times before the body started wanting it, maybe 3 or 4. But not much more than that, where running nose, scratchy skin. And then when you really are on it and you can't even begin like move without like wanting to kill people, and you're lying crying in agony, shaking for it, then you're, like that's when you are definitely in the dark.
Mm.
That's when the darkness has come and you can't get out, because when you stop, you withdraw. And every time we used to stop, it would be so hard to get through the first 48 hours. And your nose is running and you're crying and everything is bad. And then you just make it through, but your will isn't strong or something. And you just go, let's just have one more hit and then we'll feel better. Because you also feel incredibly weak when you're withdrawing. Physically incredibly weak from opioids.
So
I mean, I also published, I don't know. I mean, if I published a book quite a few years ago about a very rich businessman, Antonio Yortzel, who became an oxycodone addict after a back operation when he broke his T7 vertebra on a motorbike accident. And his is like this boardroom kind of hugely successful guy who's like chowing, thinking in like boxes of these things in the boardroom and trying to hide from all the people who work with him, because he's like withdrawing and crying like a baby, so it happens. That's what the thing with addiction, it knows no race, no creed, no wealth, no gender, it's got no, what do we call it? It's got no predilection. Yeah, no discriminations. It will just take everybody. It takes whoever. So it doesn't have any class or yeah. I mean, addiction is a thing that I guess is incredibly close to my heart in terms of what I believe about the world.
So something that really struck me in Smacked as well is there was almost this dialogue between the voice. You mentioned many times a reference to this voice of addiction. Perhaps we can draw similarities between that and maybe the voice of the darkness or the voice of Satan, the voice of the devil. There's a lot of overlap there. It is something that came up quite extensively in a previous podcast that I did with a gambling addict. Well, he was an alcoholic and a gambling addict. He was able to give up alcohol way sooner than he was able to give up gambling, because he could get away with gambling for so much longer. The fact that he was going home pissed and whatever, there was external pressure. And then eventually they got him to resolve that through family interventions and so on. And then he went and he did the thing with the AA and so on. But the gambling took way longer because you could get away with it for way longer. So it was quite interesting how you referenced this voice, because it was something that I'd heard before. And I think when people draw similarities between good and evil, God or higher power and the devil, I actually think this is what people are talking about, is this inner voice. And your story of how you first came into contact with heroin, it almost has a feeling of like a Sleeping Beauty vibe, when she sort of ventures out and she knows she shouldn't prick her finger on the spindle, but she does it anyway. And
she does it
so
anyway.
there's lots of different themes that are coming up that are repetitive in stories that we learn about in our childhood as well. And I just find it so fascinating that you decided to use that in the book as this voice. That was just a side thought for me.
I mean, it's so crazy because, like, as I said before, I'm not like this conventionally at all religious person, and I get quite. I actually find it almost like when people start talking about like God and the devil in that context of very traditional religion, because it's very much like punitive and it's very black and white, and it's very, in a way, I don't know if it's really understood. For me, the like idea that there is like the dark and the light within, like we all
Mm,
have the ability to be, maybe, I don't know if we do, but we could all have the ability to be a murderer. That something inside us, if triggered, could end a life of another. The idea of it. That's like a very extreme um, idea that I'm positing. That I know that definitely on drugs and alcohol, people do things that they would never have done. So because I got in touch with my dark side, the one that said, everyone and everything, because underneath the addict, that voice of real, like, "Yeah, I don't
mm,
care. Like, whatever I want, I will get, whatever the cost." And it does have this kind of almost demonic feel about it. I think it's a very dark drive. But it's not like some devil or some God sitting outside of us telling us, like, if you read the Bible and you get told that the Ten Commandments, you'll be all right and you'll be an ordered person. Because obviously the
mm,
10A of thou shalt not kill, that you will respect your wife and do all those nice things that the Ten Commandments do tell us to do. But the thing with addiction is that it's so much more complex because it's all inside you, that the war that starts happening is the war within the devil and the angel within oneself, the tempted and the temptor. Like, it's incredible how I've seen addicts really fight with will to stop and to try not use, but one little thing 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 thing, tiny little voice that goes, you know what, just one more, you know nobody fucking needs to know. Everyone will not know. And you have the and the thing,
mm,
and it starts working. And very soon the addict will just go, oh, okay, like one more. So I also like write, I think, in Smacked about how the addict doesn't like to be sore and the addict doesn't want to be hurt. The addict wants to be protected from all pain and just to live in this like kind of almost, especially the heroin addict, and maybe that is what I'm talking about here, is this little cocoon world where you almost revert back to some kind of like almost infancy, because you just become a blubbering idiot after a while. But like it gets so dark that it can only be hell. I mean,
mm.
living hell. I think addiction is living hell. I think most people think we're going to hell or going to heaven sometime. Hey, man, it's right happening right now. The hell and heaven you
Yeah.
choose, the story you tell yourself, the actions you take, the life you lead is the heaven or hell you lead. I think that we're all in freaking the middle of living heaven and hell. And I've had times in my life where I just went, oh my God, I'm in hell. I need to get to heaven. My need has always been to get out of hell. I've thrown myself into hell in this crazy space, but then I've always gone like, how the fuck do I get out? Get out, get out.
Mm,
And then I'll do another thing that puts me in a kind of hellish place. But as I've got older, I think that because I think in the end, it's all about how much do you actually love yourself? How much are you prepared to protect and take care of this self that has been given to us? So that's where I think the recovery really starts within addiction kind of circles of when you start going, I love and I forgive myself. And that's why often there's a religious kind of epiphany that happens with people that have erred. I'm publishing an incredible book about a drug mule who became a drug boss. And all through the time that she was carrying these enormous amounts of drugs in her stomach, sometimes with a baby on her arm, even once when the baby was in utero, she managed to convince herself by praying, please God, just protect my child. And I have to do this. I can't not. I need the money. all the way through her stuff and all the way through my stuff, there was always this thing of, God, please protect me, please bless me, please. So that like one is calling on God while you're busy doing the devil's work. I mean, that's another whole fucking story. Like when you're using, in a way, God's name in vain, which as is actually, I think, the definition of when you're like committing a crime and saying, Lord, help me, let me be a strong soldier and get through the airport security and let me get the drugs across to the other side. Like that's what a lot of the apparently drug mules do. They have like TB Joshua water and they bless themselves and they go for long religious like events before going on, say, a trip. I find that really fascinating that people can blind themselves to the kind of morality or the goodness of things by calling on God when it suits the agenda. And which is kind of, it's crazy. Yeah.
Can
I
I
did
jump
go
in
from a
there? Is
tangent there.
no,
Yeah.
beautiful, because is that not then the flip side of the coin of the stories that we tell ourselves are everything? So earlier, it's
Yeah.
still ascribing meaning to something. Do you know what I
So
mean?
in
So
a
one
way,
can
with
be
the
channeled in
stories
a positive way, and then this is now channeled in a destructive way.
and the stories we tell ourselves are everything is also possibly another word for denial. Because you could
Mm.
say the stories we tell ourselves are everything. Yeah, they are, but they could be, as you said, ones of inspiration and emancipation and spiritual fulfillment, or they could be absolute bullshit denials, where you say, listen, I'm going to stop. If I only have one drink, I'm going to be fine. So that's a story you're telling yourself. I'm going to be so fine if I just fucking just have this one drink tonight because it's this birthday. But the next day, like the person's like, so I think addicts tell themselves a lot of stories. And maybe that's where I got so good at it. Is that while I was an addict, I had the best stories. Like I could talk most people out of anything. I was a hectic addict. I was very manipulative. And I was driven by a deep hunger to get my shit. I mean, I stole from Nigerians. I lied to Nigerians. I took their drugs. I played a lot of games with crazy people because I had this like quick tongue, a quick way of getting out of things. I was destined to be absolutely killed in that dark underworld where I was because I had a very big mouth and I was getting on a lot of people's nerves just before I escaped and was chucked on the homeless farm. Oh,
When 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 you finished off with Smacked, one of the things that you left us with as the reader was gratitude, and
yeah.
the role that gratitude played in your emancipation, in your journey towards the light, because we've used that word a lot in this discussion, which is, I think, is something that anybody, regardless of their journey, can learn from, is the importance of gratitude. Can you speak to that and how your relationship with gratitude has was the stepping stone out of the hell that you found yourself in at that time?
You know what? You've just reminded me that actually I think if one has nothing else but the ability to say, thank you, at least I have this, or thank you, at least it's like this. If one has only that ability, I think one can actually get better and one can find one's way into a place of happiness or at least the light of some sorts. It has been instrumental and it continues to be, Clinton. I promise you, I am regularly like almost feeling like on my hands and knees going, thank you that I got away. Like the homelessness and the craziness of Smacked has never left me, like completely, Like I also remember I crashed a Ferrari, a 3.2 million rand fucking Ferrari. So we haven't even spoken about crashed. So there was also crashed. And so that thing has never left me. I've had such like major traumatic events, like Matt's death the bird rescue will never, like this thing that I did, for the way that I took myself out of the darkest time of my life, I promise you, I've really realized the power of expression, of writing. That's where the healing, the real, like, I suppose, truthful connection with the thing takes place, where we can be delivered from that which has hurt us into that which will hopefully not harm us. Because life is a bit of for me, it's like a tiptoe, well, not a tiptoeing, it's like a jumping between the possibilities of complete mayhem or complete joy and freedom. It does seem to be me who attracts the kinds of things that are quite extreme.
Mm. You spoke about
Yeah.
the art or the skill of being grateful for things in advance. That's something that
Mm.
stood out to me, and in that final section of Smacked. How has gratitude played a role then over the last 8 months? Are you able to copy and paste that formula or that outlook on life of gratitude, and how has it served you over the last 8 months since writing Swift?
I would never ever use the word copy and paste any of that, but it's in my DNA. As a recovering addict, I'm nearly 27 years clean and sober, so that's like a flippin' long time. I mean, 27 years. It's like, look, it's a whole
Congratulations.
lifetime. Yeah, that would happen on the 1st of September, which is around the corner. So the gratitude thing was so ingrained in me that after Matt died, it was, I suppose, within the first 10 days, I looked at the house and I said, geez, I need to paint some walls white, because he hated the idea of white walls. And now I'm the boss. I had this very like kind of strong feeling of, you're the boss now, you can choose. And a white wall made me feel incredibly grateful. Suddenly, I started seeing a little bit of light in this very dark place of the loss. And these days, I've been able to say, my God, look how lucky I am. I've been left, I'm comfortably in a house. Like, I'm safe. So I'll say, I've got food. Oh my God, look, he made us fix the roof before he died. There are all these things that I can count. He planted tomatoes, and I had lots of tomatoes. I was so grateful for every tomato that was yielded from the plants that he planted before he died. There were ways of looking at the death that didn't necessarily just mean lost, tears, bereft, victim. Like, I think a lot of people, and this is very hard to hear this, and I'm really scared to almost say it, but I'm going to say it anyway. A lot of people, when they lose people, they become the victim. And it's a very thing of like, I've lost, I've this. It's like a very, but there's never a sense of what have I gained? What has this person brought to me in my life? And what did he teach me? And what do I now have to learn in the letting go of him? So I've been able to see things in an incredibly, almost holistic way, where I see the loss, but also what is the gain here. And the gain is that I'm independent. The gain is that I don't have to deal with the part of Matt that was dying that I didn't want to see, or that he didn't want to see. And in all reality, his moods were getting worse and worse and worse. He wasn't well. So why would I wish the love of my life to suffer and not be well if he could have escaped in his sleep like he did? So I've started saying that his death was magnificent, that I believe that the light came as his soul left this earth. Like, I know the bird flew out of my hand with him on the bird's back, as crazy as that sounds. So I've been able to find things that I'm not just grateful for, but that I'm genuinely happy about. I'm not just trying to make myself feel better. I'm like genuinely embracing a feeling of, okay, so this was meant to be, that he left before me. And now I need to make something of my life without him in a new way, and I'm excited. And that is what gratitude has actually created in me. By being grateful, I'm able to actually step into a future without the fear of loss and of bereftness and of pain and brokenness.
Wonderful. That's such a wonderful way to finish, Melinda. And if I can
I
just
also
say,
think so. Yeah.
yeah, you nailed it. You
Yeah.
nailed it. And I can just say it was you. You're such a breath of fresh air with respect to how raw you are and how clearly you communicate, and you don't pull any punches. And in a world of
Mm.
politically correct culture and having to, mind your B's and Q's, I think it was, as I say, it was a breath of fresh air for me, just raw, unadulterated expression. And
Thank
that's been the case
you.
through both the books that I've read of yours, and I know that I'll get to the others with the
You will.
Ferrari and
You
that sort
have
of thing as
to.
well.
Maybe we should meet for coffee one day when I'm in Joburg, when I'm back from Amsterdam. I've got this great book. I'll invite you. I mean, whether that we'll be able to even talk, but I'll invite you to the launch. You must have this Taryn Eager, the drug mule, on your podcast. She's in
Mm.
Joburg as well. I mean, she would be amazing but you must read the book. But listen, it was really good. I had no expectation about this. I was like, okay, whatever, let's do it. And this was absolutely wonderful for me.
Oh well, I'm glad. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was amazing for me too, and it's very interesting. I've said it
Okay.
before for people who are listening. But it's one thing. It's really cool reading a book, knowing you're going to chat to the author. It adds like this sort of, I don't know. It's got a different feel about reading a book when you know you're going to chat to the person afterwards. And yeah, I'm really
Oh,
fortunate that we got to chat. It's really been fantastic. And you are episode number 100, so I'm thrilled that you yeah. So you get to hold this very special crown of being episode number 100. So congratulations
listen, and I'll
to me
share it
and
as
to you.
well. Yes, congratulations to us. To us. Um, Tell me
You can
something.
claim the
When
other
will it be?
99 episodes. Don't worry, it's fine. I'll give it to you.
Yeah, you better.
If people want to find you, they want to get in touch with you and follow what you're up to with respect to your writings and with what books you're publishing as well, where can they do that?
Please tell them to go to my website,
Mm,
www.melindaferguson.co.za.
okay, I'll put that in the show notes
I've
with
got
links
lots
to
of
the books
stuff
and all of
there.
that.
Yeah, and Facebook, I
Awesome.
guess, but I mean, yeah.
Hey everyone. A huge amount of work and effort goes into producing this podcast, whether it's from the research going into the episode, whether it's finding the guests coming to the location, or them being online, to producing the content, edited and putting it in a format that is conducive to your ears and your eyes. And it goes a really, really long way if you can just do me one thing in return for this free content: share it. Share it far and wide, and if you find an episode useful, send it to someone who might feel the same way. That's all. Thanks a million. See you next week.